Welcome everybody to another edition of Anugo for New Home Sales. I'm your host today, Sarah Williams. I'm the Director of Sales here at Anugo. And with me today, I have the founder of FPG, which is Forrest Performance Group, the amazing Jason Forrest. Jason has been crushing it in the new home industry for over 22 years and has been training sales for at least 19 of them. I'm a huge FPG fangirl. I was just telling Jason how I stalk them on social media, and I'm just so excited to have you on. So thanks, Jason, and welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm glad to be here. Let's talk all things sales.
All things sales. Well, and we're gonna talk all things Jason Forrest too. But for those that do not know you, I always like to hear about the journey. Let's learn more about you and how you jumped into new home sales specifically.
So I was very fortunate in the sense that I grew up in a very sales positive family. So my father owns a jewelry store in North Dallas. And so I'm 44. He's had the jewelry store for 44 years. And so I grew up with this very kind of sales family. And then my mother was a speech teacher and debate professor for over 50 years, just retired a couple years ago. For 50 years, my Sunday school teacher was Zig Ziglar. And so I just had like a really good kind of upbringing, as a kid. Unlike a lot of kids, selling for most people is kind of a plan B career. For me, it was always a plan A career. It was something that my parents would always, or my dad specifically would, he would just kind of always revert back to that. And I would say, hey, I want to make endless amounts of money and I don't want to be handcuffed. And he's like, well, the only thing you can do is either own your own business or be in sales. And so that was always kind of my direction that I was always on. My first job out of college was I was a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch. And I had to make 100 cold calls a day. And I really liked that whole stockbroker thing. I thought that was a really cool profession. But that was in 2000 when that happened. And of course, 9/11 and that whole kind of shenanigan that went on. And so early on in my career, they immediately just kind of like slashed anyone that didn't have a productivity level at a certain kind of measure. And so I was eliminated that moment. I could have gone to a different place besides Merrill Lynch. But my brother-in-law at the time was a builder. He was a superintendent. And so, he said, hey, why don't you look at new home sales? And so I looked at new home sales. I looked at pharmaceutical sales. Those are kind of my two top picks and ended up going the new home sales direction. And it was really great. I will tell you, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I mean, the 2 years that I spent making 100 cold calls a day and all the FUs that I got, and just, it was crazy. I wouldn't have changed it for the world because it made me a way better new home sales professional. Because I remember when I first got hired, this guy named Joe Tinker, he was my sales manager at Ryland Homes at the time in Dallas. And he said, one of the reasons why we're hiring you is because of your kind of initiate mentality. In new home sales, it's different. People kind of sit back and they wait for customers to come in. But you've never had any customers like pick up the phone and call you. We didn't have that at Merrill Lynch. So at Merrill Lynch, you only got a customer to call you that was interested if you were already a top producer. So it was like the rich get richer kind of thing, right? So the call-in customers, the younger rookie salespeople didn't receive those leads. Those leads only went to the people who were already making money. So I had to convince people to move forward with us, even though they weren't interested in working with Merrill Lynch and having that financial service. And so he said, I need you to take that same attitude and energy into home building. In home building, we're going to give you research is in Dallas, Texas, back in those days, we're going to give you 8 to 10 units of traffic a week are going to come in your model home. I need you to convince 1 out of those 10 a week to choose you. So 9 out of those 10 cannot choose you. You can actually convince 9 out of those 10 to not buy from you. I just need you to convince 1 out of 10 to buy from you, or 4 out of the 40 a month. And it was just like, Sarah, mind blowing to me. I was like, are you kidding me? You're going to give me 10 people a week. And he said, within the research says that within 6 months, they're all going to make a decision on whom they're going to buy from. So all 10 of these are going to buy a house, either an older house or a new home, but they're going to buy a house within 6 months. That's the research back in those days. The question is, who are they going to buy from? I just need you to convince, again, 1 out of those 10 to choose you on a weekly basis. Well, that was just so like mind blowing to me. And so fast forward, I ended up selling, I don't know. Average of probably 8 a month. 1 month I sold like 14, and that was only with having, again, 8 to 10 units of traffic a week. And so my numbers my total numbers were the same as far as like sales volume wise, was the same as the salespeople in California and Florida that had 100 units of traffic a week. So they had 10 units of traffic. Sorry, they had 10 times more traffic, but we had the same kind of volume in sales. So obviously I had a 10 times higher conversion rate. And people are like, well, how did you do that? Well, honestly, it was just my mindset. Like it was this kind of like gratitude, appreciation, expectancy thing that was just insane. And so I just went into it. I mean, every customer that came in, that was my mentality is you're going to buy a home within 6 months. It's only a matter of who you're going to buy from. And so I just got to convince you to buy from me and not buy from anyone else. And it was just, oh, this is freaking awesome. And no one's yelling at me. No one's cussing at me. No one's telling me to F off. No one's hanging up the phone on me. Like, this is the greatest thing in the world.
It's a different vibe, right? A
oh my
totally different
gosh.
vibe.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I love that because as you were talking, I'm thinking it was your mindset. It was the gratitude. You didn't have the bias, right, of someone that's been sitting in that chair, with the wait attitude, which I listened to your webinar on LinkedIn yesterday, getting ready for the sales rally, and you guys talked about that. It's like that wait mentality is sit around and wait. What are you waiting for? Just get out and go, pick up the phone, do all the things. And you had that energy coming in. They were probably so stoked that you landed on their doorstep, that your boss at that time. And then you went into training because everyone's like, we need more of this. We need more Jason Forrests of the world. So then you dove into training. Is that kind of
well, that was an interesting story too. So, and I want to, there's a lesson from that as well. So I very quickly, I got promoted to a sales manager position for another company. And that simple story was, a person came in, his name was Bruno Pasquinelli at Pasquinelli Homes at the time. And he came in and I, put him in my car, and I was selling out of a trailer at that time, put him in my car into the whole thing and went back and closed him 3 times. And he finally said, all right, I'll let you know, I'm not going to buy from you today because I'm Bruno Pasquinelli. I'm the owner of your biggest competitor across the street. And he said, but you're creaming my 2 veteran salespeople that have models, and that a neighborhood's been established now for a year, and you literally have dirt. I didn't have roads in yet. I had no roads. It was just dirt paths, and I was like off-roading people, showing them where the road would be and where the site would be, and doing the home site thing and putting the the dirt in the bag and like doing the cones. And I just did everything. I just did what you're supposed to do. And he said, I see why you're clobbering them. They're just not doing anything like this. And so then he asked me to go into management. And so I did that. And that was a successful time. And then a position came open to be a trainer for Richmond American Homes. And I thought it was a little bit premature, kind of a longer story, but I just decided to go ahead and go forward with it. And so I became a trainer for Richmond American Homes. And that was really fun because they told me at the time they had tried to make kind of the traditional HR training world, which is, a person who hasn't sold anything before, and then we're going to teach them how to be a trainer. And then that trainer is going to go teach salespeople how to sell. Well, they were kind of getting eaten alive. And so instead, Richmond at the time said, hey, we're going to try a different way. We're going to take a top salesperson, and then we're going to teach them how to be a trainer. So we're going to take a practitioner and teach them how to be a trainer versus take a trainer who's never sold anything, because the salespeople aren't going to relate to them, right? And so, so I had no idea how to like teach people or behave. I didn't know I did any of that stuff. So I learned it that way, right? And that's really been the foundation of FPG. I mean, so the only reason why I left Rich American Homes is because sometimes I think it's easier to change things from the outside. And I've always been a very kind of leading edge, aggressive thought leader type person. And when you're kind of inside the organization, there's a lot of like HR and policies and politics to get through, and you can't just change things as fast as you want to. And so that's when I went off and at the time joined Jeff Shore. We had a company called Shore Forest and did that for a few years, and then eventually started FPG in the direction we're on now.
So I love that, because that is how it works. And Mary and I talked about this. I interviewed your beautiful wife probably a month or 2 ago, and how she says that you see something in someone and you bring them, you put them almost through your process. And it sounds like people were seeing things in you that you're like you said, it felt premature at the time in your mind. Did you feel like you had a little bit of that story where I'm too new at this, or it's too early in my career for me to take this step? Like talk to me a little bit about what was going through your head when they asked you to become a trainer. Did you have any sort of self-doubt?
Oh,
We all know that, yeah.
I had a huge doubt. I mean, now we call them leashes, and that's a big model we teach called performance equals knowledge minus leashes. And one of our books I wrote is called The Mindset of a Sales Warrior, where we talk about the 4 types of leashes: a story, self-image, reluctance, and a rule. And yes, the story that I told myself was that I'm too inexperienced. You know, what am I going to say to kind of these veteran salespeople? And I don't know where I learned this, because I wish I knew where I learned it, so I could actually give credit to the right person. In my world, what happens is, I'm sorry, you're the same way, is that it's like the Matrix. I mean, I'm constantly downloading YouTube, audiobooks, real books. I mean, whatever it is, I'm always like downloading stuff. And so in listening to things. And so sometimes you forget like where you actually like originally, like the origin of where you learned it, right? But there was some origin of where I learned this concept. And that was that, yes, I was 25. So I was 25 when I first became the head of national sales training for a Fortune 100 company, for this Richmond American Homes builder and top 10 home builder. And someone said to me, they said, look, in order for people to kind of like rely on you and believe in you, there's like a few things you must master. Let me see if I remember this right. So number one is you have to bring more passion than them. So you have to be more passionate. You have to be more enthusiastic about like what you're teaching. And so I had to be more enthusiastic about like the concepts, the ideas, the selling philosophies, what people think about, do, say, et cetera. Number two is you have to provide like way more evidence. So just come in like ready, that if you kind of anticipate the objections, right? What are all the things that the people are going to say? There's no way, Jason, this is going to work. You don't know what you're talking about. And just make sure that you have like plenty of like evidence to kind of back up your claim, because it's not about what you believe, it's what you can prove, right? So make sure that you can kind of prove that. And so if you can have the combination of like the evidence combined with like the enthusiasm around it, like that alone will overcompensate for the lack of experience.
I love it.
Isn't it cool?
So
and so,
yeah.
And people even said that. I remember having like a veteran salesperson one time stand up, and it was one of my like first classes that I taught, and his name was Bill Gleason at the time. And he said, look, I don't know if Jason's correct or not, but he's so confident in what he's saying that I think we should all give it a shot. This guy had been selling for like 40 years. And I'm like, I've only sold for a few years, and now I'm a trainer. And like, it was an interesting type of like awakening. And so I've always just kind of brought that into my world. I mean, it's like, so 100% of the time, whenever I teach anything, like we have a course right now called the 6 Strategies to Sell Through a Down Market. And it's very, very strong. It's very powerful. We have another course on how to sell through rising interest rates. And I mean, I'm always prepared on what are people going to potentially say of why this is not going to work. And I'm guns loaded with like 5 different pieces of evidence ready to like counter.
You got a backpack full. You're like, hold on, wait.
Yeah.
For those of us in sales, it's like, I mean, this sounds probably harsh, but because you sell warrior selling, I know you get this. It's almost like your evidence is your weapon, or your like this, like you're ready. I hate to say that we have to be on the defense, but those of us that are change agents in our industry specifically, but in any industry, you have to know your stuff inside out, and you have to be ready to present it. You have to be prepared mentally, emotionally, and then with your toolbox, whatever that toolbox is. So cones when you're walking sites, or evidence with finances and things like that. I love all of that. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. When you decided to go out on your own, was there something that happened? Was there something like an aha moment that you're like, it's game time. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, I think that, again, I was very fortunate that I had my dad, and he was an entrepreneur. And, so I think it's a lot easier to be an entrepreneur when you come from a family, and a family is like already doing that, because if your parents are more employees and and their primary kind of desire is security, because they need that, consistent paycheck, and, that's different. Right. But I was raised in a family. My dad sold diamonds, Sarah. I mean, so, I always tell people like, Jason, I don't think you understand like how hard it is to sell homes. I'm like, try selling a $15,000 1 carat diamond in a 2008 recession, or in a 2001, or in 2015, or now in 2022, 2023. I mean, that's a hard thing to sell. So I was raised though in that kind of way of figuring that out, and that mentality. And the whole idea of entrepreneurs is real simple. It's do you feel like there's a problem that needs to be solved? And do you feel like you're the best person to solve it? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's, and I'm a part of a lot of entrepreneur like groups and societies and so forth. And every entrepreneur I've ever met, I mean, that's basically it. It's like, this was a problem that I felt like was in the world, and this problem must be solved. And here's the benefit to the world if it's solved. And I really feel like I'm the only one that is most kind of motivated and capable to solve that problem. And that's really what I was. I mean, like the reason why I started FPG, and the reason why I even left my previous partner is because there just was not a sales training company at that time that came from a perspective of being a practitioner first. So my frustration was, and this came from being at Richmond American Homes when I was the head of training, and my job was to go find third-party training providers and then bring them to our organization, which is what a lot of like heads of HR and stuff are doing. And I would interview them, and I would just go, as a top salesperson myself, you guys are nuts. Like that stuff's so yucky, it's so cheesy, and you end up finding out that, Sarah, that they were kind of like, the story behind them was they were kind of an average salesperson at best. If a trainer creates material for the masses, then the top 20% say, this is a complete waste of my time. There's no way I would do anything like this. This doesn't work in the real world. This is stupid. The stuff that we teach, for example, it's uncomfortable. I mean, like, like a lot of our competitors, I mean, they teach average things, which is like, it's very comfortable. And it's very like, yeah, that's great. I can do all that. That makes sense. I feel good about that. And, let's have nice relationship conversations. And it's just very average type stuff. And so so from a majority, like if our goal is as a leadership team, if our goal is we want to provide training that gives positive kind of like attributes to, or positive accolades to, we are not that. But if you want training that turns your average salesperson into a warrior, then that's exactly what we are. It's like signing up for CrossFit though. I mean, like most people, like they don't want to do that. They want the body of CrossFit, but they don't want to do the
It's
work
hard.
of CrossFit.
But some of the sales managers or some of the executives that could potentially need a trainer, they would have to put in the same effort as their salesperson going through your program, I would suspect. And if they're like, oof, they're not up for that challenge. Do you experience that like the decision maker or whoever's, I always say you have to get the buy-in from the top down. So do you find that a lot of people are just that don't want to put in the work even when they're at a management level?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, but so FPG we're three companies. So we've got the sales training company and sales leadership training company.
Okay.
So our warrior selling is number 2 in the world, and our leadership sales coaching is number 1 in the world for sales management training. And again, we're in 42 industries. So, and on that ranking of global gurus, our training program, we're the only new home sales trainer that's even on that list.
I love it.
So the rest of the people on the list are like Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins and Sandler and spin selling, solution selling, et cetera. So we're the only actual like new home sales trainers on that list. And so, but I share that with you because, and so we're 1, training, 2, fractional sales leadership. And that's for builders that have, let's say, or any company that has less than, let's say 10 salespeople and really can't justify the expense of having a head of sales. They would outsource the sales leadership to us. And, and it's a really good kind of affordable way to do that for these companies that have like 2, 3, 4, 5 salespeople, right? And then the third thing we do is we're a recruiting company. So we're a recruiting company. So we recruit salespeople and just sales leadership. And the reason why I share that with you is because when we recruit sales leaders, one of the primary things we look for, this is a very important thing for you to think about, is did the sales leader want to become a sales manager because they're looking for certainty and they're looking for significance, or they're looking for growth and contribution? So if they're looking for certainty and significance, certainty is, I'm so tired of the grind, of the inconsistency of the income, and I want a stable paycheck, that's certainty. And significance is, I just want to be the boss and I want to tell people what to do, and I like hearing myself speak and I like having that. That's significance. Or do they want to be the coach and the leader out of growth and contribution? Growth is like, I truly want to figure out, how do we create the greatest sales experience on the planet? And how do I make sure that every salesperson is giving every customer an experience that the customer says, I don't know about you, but that was the greatest sales conversation I ever had in my entire life. Like that was phenomenal, right? So that's growth, and contribution is I personally, as a salesperson, cracked the code. I figured out how to be successful regardless of the circumstance. And so now I want to teach other people. I want to create a legacy. I want to teach others how to do that. You see?
Yeah.
So
No, that makes so much sense to me. Like that answers, because I've obviously met many teams over my time in the industry. And for our listeners, owners, that's, you need to get FPG to do the leadership hiring and training. You need to get FPG to do the sales hiring and training, match made in heaven. Because if you're working with old mindset or the mindset of just exhaustion, I'm calling it exhaustion because that's I'm just summarizing, but they're not looking to be the leaders, so to speak. The leaders aren't looking to push the envelope. They're looking to kind of sit on the throne. That's not going to grow. That's not going to get you through this cycle. It's not going to get you through any cycle, but for sure not right now.
In defense of some of these sales managers that are out there and sales leaders, is a lot of them, they actually intended to choose growth and contribution. They just maybe got into a culture. It was just all about the number. It was all about the score. And it wasn't about excellence. It wasn't about selling perfectly. It wasn't about that. And it wasn't about creating the perfect sales presentation. And so it was just about the number. And so what I would advise them to do if they're listening right now is, if that's you, then the only way out of this jam that we're in right now is to actually go back to creating that perfect sales presentation. So they have to kind of like find it in themselves to kind of slow down. And it's like the paradox of selling more, because the more we put emphasis on, we just got to sell a home this week, the less you're going to sell a house. Right. But the more we put an emphasis on, like in my latest book, I came up with the 12 steps to have 100% conversion rate. And the more we put the emphasis on, how do we execute those 12 steps with 100% precision, the more the score will take care of itself. So it just depends on where is your emphasis, because you 100% cannot control the score itself, but you can control what you think about, what you say, and what you do, which is my background and Mary's background is in Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is in the study of what people think about, what they say, and what they do. And how does that relate from a top producer perspective and then an average and a bottom? And that's what NLP really is.
I'm thinking back to my early days of selling, and it was very much watch and learn, Sarah. There was no training. It was mirroring. And I'm sure a lot of people out there could relate to that. And I'm going back almost 20 years. So Jason, I started probably slightly after you did in the industry. The company I worked for at the time that I became a brand new on-site sales rep, there was no training. I literally watched a salesperson, watched their process. That was my training. It was mirroring. So any good stuff, any bad stuff, that was my process. So as the years progressed, it's 20 years later, but I did get the sales training, and my goodness, what a change in the salesperson I became. I had all of the core values and all I just didn't have the process. I was following someone else's 25-year-old process that they probably learned from the person before them. And they weren't bad. They were actually successful in their own right, but I didn't have the skill set to make it my own. It wasn't a solid enough process that I could duplicate and make it my own. So I think when we're talking about sales training and we're talking about processes, warrior selling, that's so important for your new salespeople, because they'll probably be put in a process like I was. And I was just good enough in the beginning ish, right? I mean, I would have failed and fell flat on my face today, but it was a pretty decent market when I started 20 years ago. It was before the recession and things were good. So I was mediocre at best, but as soon as I got sales training and started layering on, but then also we didn't have the tools, Jason, like you and I have today, and what you and FPG put up for free. I didn't even have access to that. The internet was like still new on the scene. So I couldn't even download or watch a webinar. So it was quite different 20 years ago. So those that are not investing in sales training are builders. Get the books, spend time with your sales folks and watch Jason's trainings. Or if you are not working for a builder that thinks in that way, I would suggest do it on your own, be a self-starter and get out there and start reading and reading and watching, because that's the beginning of changing. What would you say to someone that's in a position where they don't have a builder that's investing?
I mean, I'm a tough person to ask that question to, because
Yeah.
we spend a lot of money. I mean, Mary and I, we spent $250,000 on a personal like mental coach over just a 12-month period. It was literally $250,000, and that's just what we paid them in training, not the fees of like going out there and flights and stuff like that. So I'm a different person to ask, because I've always just paid a lot of money. I mean, when I first became a speaker, I was really bad at it, like really, really bad. I was labeled the Professor Jason, and I just wasn't that relatable. And so same thing. I went and found this guy named Steve Siebold, who was a $1 million speaker coach. There's like hundreds of thousands of like professional speakers in the world, but there's less than 5,000 of them that technically qualify as a $1 million speaker, meaning that they make $1 million a year in speaking related fees. So I paid him. And so at the time, this is a cool story, I was only making $100,000 a year in training. That was when it was actually when I first left Jeff. That was when I was basically taking home and in my own company. And so I was making about $100,000. Well, his total fee that he charged me that year, it cost me $120,000. So in the sense of like what he charged me plus all the travel costs and so forth, it was $120,000. And so you're thinking, well, how in the world did you pay that when we only made $100,000? Well, I got a loan and put on a credit card, and the way that you do things. And people thought I was nuts. So like, well, you're going to spend 120% of what you make in a year for like investment in this. I said, look, I spent 40 grand on an MBA in marketing for myself, and that really didn't do anything for me, but this is like directly related to my career, right? This is like me being a better speaker, and that will change everything if I could do that. And so anyway, so I signed up for it, and I went through his very grueling process. I mean, it was every week you had to turn in a story, a vignette. He ripped you apart on what you were saying, how you were standing, how you were presenting. I mean, it was very rigorous, 3-4 hours a week, plus in-person seminars and workshops. And it was very rigorous. And at the end of that 12 months, he approved 18 minutes. That's it. So I turned in stories and speeches that entire year. And that in 12 months, he only approved 18 minutes that he would say was worth like a keynote, like worth something you would put at the rally, right? Something that was valuable enough to be on that stage. And he would always say, well, that's good enough, but put that in like a podcast, or put that in a webinar, or put that in like on a training session, put that in an article, but don't put that on the main stage. So they always say. And it was 8. So anyway, that's it. Now, fast forward, at the age of 30, I guess I was 30 years old at the time, I then qualified to become a $1 million speaker. And I wasn't the youngest. The youngest actually was a guy named Rory Vaden, who wrote the book called Take the Stairs. He's a very kind of famous motivational speaker. He was 28 when he broke the threshold. And then 2 years later, I was the chair of the National Speakers Club, $1 Million Speaker Club. If a company's not going to invest in you, then should you do it? And, and my answer is, I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because like, if you're not going to invest in you, then why should anyone else invest in you? There's not a greater return on yourself than that. Like in our case, we have our 90-day warrior selling program. It's number 2 in the world that we kick off every 6 weeks. It's $5,000. I'll just say it like it is, $5,000. It's 50 hours over 90 days.
Wow.
So it's extremely intense. We build a customized script with them. So they get a personal consulting call one-on-one before it even begins to go over their entire community, their situation. And we co-create, using my Neuro-Linguistic Programming science, we co-create this beautiful script in their language. For 90 days, for 13 weeks, they go through this program. And so it's $5,000. You're thinking, okay, well, that's a lot of money, Jason. Well, I mean, not really. I mean, you make $5,000 a house, right? So, or more, so it's, it's like, the question is, what is the probability that you would sell one more house if you did this? And then someone says, well, probably 100% probability I'd sell one more house in 13 weeks. Okay. Then what's the probability that you would sell 3 more houses? Okay. Well, you're right. I'd probably sell 3 more houses if I did this. Okay. So now what's the probability? Well, probably 100%. Okay. So if you could go to Vegas right now and give someone $5,000, and at 100% probability, it would turn, or even 80% probability, it would turn into $15,000. I'm sorry, not 15,000. It would turn into, let's say 8,000, because let's say you make 8,000 per house. So 8 times 3 is let's say 20, was it 23, 24, something like that?
Yeah.
24. So 24,000. And you had an 80% probability of giving someone $5,000. And they said you have 80% odds of taking $5,000 and turning it into 24,000. Sarah, would you take that bet?
Hell yes.
Hell yes.
Right. Well, and I love that self-investment, 1,000% yes. I think for our newbies, like when I was first starting out, I was as green as the grass can be. I knew nothing, right? So for anyone that's new, that's actually listening to a podcast right now, bravo for one, if you're actually like tuning in, but this is the first step. Just keep reading and absorbing. And eventually my company did, but I don't think I even had any direction back in the day. I mean, if you looked at my bookshelf, I was definitely reading self-help books and all the things and psychology books. So that definitely helped me, but it's almost like now the application of it, you and Mary and your team, you go out and do the work yourself and really you're a practitioner, as you've said multiple times on this podcast. And then now how do you apply it to, in our case, what we're talking about today is new home sales. And you're in, did you say 52 industries?
42. 42 last time we checked.
Okay.
42.
I was right there.
Now,
42 industries. So holy smokes, right? So you're able to take what you know and the warrior selling process and apply it to 42 different industries. How could you say no to that if you're a business owner with a sales team? How much work and how much money would it take for a sales owner to figure this all out, right? Like you've done the work, you do the work every day.
I mean, there's no way, because again, I have an entire team of, I don't know, 30 plus employees, and all we do is focus on this. And I've got researchers and writers, and I mean, there's just no way. So, and also too, I mean, we'll even go as far as giving people an interest-free loan. So if you take the 5,000 divided by 12, it's only $416 a month for a person to even, get the five. If they didn't want to spend the $5,000 up front, they could even be $416 a month. But I think in the end, I mean, the secret, Sarah, is just to believe in yourself. I mean, I always ask people all the time, there's two reasons why people don't succeed in life or they don't accomplish their goals. It's because number one, they don't believe it's possible. And number two, they don't believe they're capable. Like those are the two things. And that's part of the things we actually do in our training is, so first, the possibility question is, well, do I think it's possible to sell more than I'm selling now in this market? And the first thing I would ask is, well, is there anyone else that's doing it? Well, Jason, I mean, I don't think you understand. I only have 5 units of traffic a week, and I used to have 20. And okay, well, is there anyone else that's selling what you desire to sell with 5 units of traffic a week? And the answer is yes. So one, we know it's possible. And number two is, are you capable? And that's a different thing. I mean, so if I was to work with you, Sarah, and you're like, I don't know, Jason, I don't know if I'm capable of doing it, then what I would say is, I would, and from a coaching NLP perspective, I would carry back to a previous time in your life. And I would say, well, tell me something in your life that you were like truly like great at. How much time and energy and effort and intention are you putting in that area that you're great in compared to this other problem you're trying to solve? And I was asked that same question one time, and to actually my speaker coach. And I said, he said, I'm curious, how much time are you putting into, mastering becoming a great speaker compared to like your football career in high school? And I was like, oh my God, like 1/10 of the time. I was like,
2 a day, 3 a day.
I put like 100% more effort and energy and study into being a great football player in high school than I did to be a 30-year-old $1 million speaker. So that was something that kind of like clicked in me that, well, what if I did? What if I did? And then I just realized like, that's kind of how easy it is to be successful. Now it's easier to not be successful because it's easier to kind of blame the economy and the builder for lack of traffic and marketing and everything else. But it's really easy to be successful because you just have to kind of put forth the same level of effort in selling homes today as you did in becoming a dance or football player in high school.
Or you figure out this is not the right career for you as you go through these exercises, and people have that aha moment of, I should be putting forth this effort in something else that I'm more passionate about, and they move on. In my opinion, that's a positive too. Positive for the builder, the owner, and positive for that person because they're going towards their passion and whatever they're going to put their energy into. We have the sales rally coming up. This podcast is going to be posted before IBS. You are on the stage with Myers Barnes, or Mary Marshall Forrest, Jim Barkin, and Quint Lears. Any secret nugget or anything that you're super excited about for the rally this year?
I'm really enjoying how we've spent a lot of time together. And I think in rallies in the past, there was not a lot of synergy with people on the stage. And so as the moderator this year, I really wanted us to kind of work as a team. And so we spent a lot of time beforehand developing our messages and making sure that we, all equally put on a great show. I really think it's going to be, my intention is to be the greatest rally that people ever experienced. But I mean, again, the whole theme is very simple, and it's how to think, speak, and act differently in order to sell more in 2023. And so, I mean, that really is the frame that I want people to go into. Is I told the speakers, I said, no yak. I'm so tired of going to the rally and the speakers on stage are very yacky. They're very chunked up. Hey, be likable and make everyone your best friend. And it's all about relationships and make sure you follow up. And it's like, yeah, we understand that, like blah, 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 so
like deeper.
Go deeper. Right. And so I'm really pushing the speakers. Like I need lots of notes. I want people to be taking tons of notes, because you're not telling them something they already know. It's about, you're telling them details of things they've never thought of before, like give them tactical tips. And so that's what we're doing.
No, I love that. And I love when you can sit on a webinar or one podcast, whatever it is, someone is willing to pull out the notebook, be like, I cannot forget this, or they have their camera out or whatever it may be that they're recording it, because time is so valuable. Like the fact that you're even doing this with me today. And I find it extremely valuable, and our listeners will too. If someone takes the time to tune in, what's the takeaway? Can they apply something today? What's their action steps after they walk out that room? Or what, are they inspired to change? I'm super, super excited. I'm speaking right before you guys. I think my session ends at 2. So I'll be like running from my session to see the rally. I'm super excited about that.
Well, hey, make sure you get everyone there. Make sure you tell everyone.
I will be telling everyone from my stage to walk with me to your stage. So your book, Warrior Selling.
So it's Warrior Selling, the 12 Steps to 100% Conversion Rate. It is the only sales book that I'm aware of. I've read, I don't know, thousands of them, that it's the entire sales process from beginning to end. So every other trainer out there, including myself, we would write books that had like parts of the sales process, but this is the entire thing from beginning to end, which I think is kind of cool to like have, a book that kind of completes the cycle from beginning to end. I mean, we have 42 industries that are represented in this, and the U.S. Army recruiters. So we train the United States Army recruiters, and we've improved their enlistments by 108% using this 12-step process. So it works. So I personally would ask everyone to buy it on Amazon, mainly because I need the reviews. So I like to have the reviews on there. So please get it. And then if you could kindly put a review if it's valuable to you.
I love it. I love it. And what's the best way that someone can reach you? Where do you hang out on social? LinkedIn for one,
Yep.
But is there anywhere else? Like, what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you?
Sure. So I mean, definitely feel free to just go ahead and email me at jason@fpg.com. But also LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's where I spend majority of my time. I really try to own, that space. And I don't know, I think it's obviously more business-like than fake book. So I like to hang out
Hey,
on
I'm on
LinkedIn.
Facebook.
And we're on Facebook too. I mean, I got 1 million followers on Facebook and blah, blah, blah. But I really prefer, I like the LinkedIn world. It seems like people are there, they're serious about one thing, and that's like improving themselves in the business world. And that's where I want to hang out.
And I want to tell everybody, he's Jason and FPG, they're not lying. I mean, there are so many resources that they put out. I follow them religiously. Every webinar they stream on LinkedIn. You are a voice that everyone should tune into, in my opinion. I do religiously, to you and Mary and to the team. So thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're like one of the busiest guys, $1 million speaker over here, giving us some free nuggets into who you are. So thank you so much. And your level of success. So many people are, thinking about going into training or doing things, or just trying to improve themselves. And I think there's so much they can learn from you, Jason. I'm just so excited that you spent the time with us today. So,
well, thank you, Sarah. And just like I said before, I'm a practitioner. So everything that I say, I do as well. And so I actually need to go on a sales call right now. So I have a sales call I need to go talk to.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All right. See you. Bye.